On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, we're going to dive into the unique way that SGA got to 30 points in this game against the Knicks, and Josh Giddey talks about the pairing between SGA and himself. The Thunder do fall to the Knicks, but there's still a ton to take away from this game. We'll talk about it on today's Locked On Thunder podcast.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and editor-in-chief over at thunderousintentions.com, Rylan Stiles. You can follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, brought to you by BetterHelp, we're going to dive into the Oklahoma City Thunder falling to the New York Knicks in the Paycom Center despite another 30-point game from SGA, Josh Giddey getting it going in the latter stages of this game, and Dort continuing his hot streak. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service. BetterHelp has matched 3 million people with professionals and professionally licensed and vetted therapists, available 100% online. Learn more and save 10% off your first month by going to betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. So we're going to start the way that we always do with our game overview, talking about how this Thunder team fared against the Knicks. So Chet Holmgren was out. Ousmane Dieng was out. Pokusevski was out. For Chet Holmgren, of course, is out for the season. Poku has that ankle issue. Probably is going to play Wednesday, but we'll see, obviously, how he progresses there. Watching him warm up before the game, he looked good in warm-ups, but of course, it's not always indicative of what's going to happen in the next game, but he did look good in warm-ups. And then Ousmane Dieng's just with the G League team right now. They have him out there working on being a playmaker, working on being kind of more of a ball-dominant guy. I don't know how long his G League stint will be, but it's been the last couple of weeks. And then Jalen Williams from Arkansas was called back up. So technically he's a DNP CD, but he played over 30 minutes in the G League game this afternoon, and so he was not going to be able to play for the Thunder after playing 30 minutes. But Jalen Williams was awesome in the G League game, was way more offensive in that game than what you might have been used to seeing him play for the Thunder. It was good to see that. Obviously, it's been a long night. We're recording this at 1:30 a.m. after being in the Paycom Center for the better part of 12 hours. So that was a very fun day. The Thunder starters: SGA, Josh Giddey, Dort, Kenny Hustle, and Jeremiah Robinson-Earl. Who were the 5 biggest minute getters? Well, it was SGA, Josh Giddey, Dort, and J-Dub, along with JRE. So the Thunder saw Trey Mann return, Darius Bazley return, and Isaiah Joe return. They played 13 players in this game. Of course, the biggest player is SGA. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander showed you again his superstar potential and his superstar ability that he's kind of reached this year. He scored 30 points in this one, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, a steal, a block, and only 3 turnovers. He got to the free throw line and shot 13 free throws, going 12 for 13. He went 0 for 2 from 3. One of the threes was like a 3 or 4 step behind the line chuck. I don't know if you want to count that one, but he did go 0 for 2 from 3. The way that SGA just rolls out of bed and drops 30 points, that is the definition of a star. He even missed some uncharacteristic shots at the rim. He blew a couple layups that should have been easy for someone of his ability and his rim finishing ability especially that we've seen over the years. And he still got to 30 points. He still just wound up at that magic number without just jacking up shots left and right. That's what superstars do. Superstars are able to have a quiet 30-point game, or a game where you're watching it and in real time you're like, kind of an off night from Shai. Then you look at the box score and he's got 30 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, a steal, a block. That's what stars do. In the way that he's scoring these points, it just shows how deep that his bag is, right? Sure, the 3-point shot's not coming around at an extremely high pace, so to say, right? He's shooting a good percentage, but just not shooting them very often, not very frequently. But every other way that he scores is repeatable and also just a tribute to how good he is. Like that spin around, fadeaway jump shot in the restricted area. Like that kind of shot only a select few players can make. And we're seeing him in real time develop as a scorer. Going back to his rookie year in LA and his first year in Oklahoma City, it kind of felt like his game was more based upon his ability to switch gears. Like the fact that he was kind of herky-jerky and, he could go blazing fast and then all of a sudden just stop and go in basically slow motion, it felt like, toward the rim. It was more finesse. It was more slithery, his ability to score and get to the rim, his first couple of years in the NBA. This year, you're seeing him still use that pace. You're seeing him still use that finesse and that slithery nature of his game. But he's using his body. He's bumping into guys with his shoulder to create that space. He's taking on contact at the rim. There was a shot in this game where he's on a little block. He lowers the shoulder into a guy, which creates, of course, a little bit of distance. Then spins, which creates even more distance. Then shoots, and it's just an incredible shot that he nails. But all those different ways to create space now are there for him. It's not just the start, stop, kind of looking like he's kind of glitching down the floor on the way to the rim and a scoop layup in between two defenders. Like he's got such a portfolio about him where he can score in such a multitude of ways that is the exact reason why he's a superstar. And one thing that stood out to me about his game this year, beyond the mid-range, beyond the rim, he's scoring elite at the rim. He's an incredible mid-range finisher at the short mid-range, long mid-range, and mid-range, so to say. The biggest thing has been his playmaking. Like his playmaking, I think, gets overlooked because he's so good at scoring, and his teammates are not cashing in enough to make his assist column be eye-popping. It's good, but it's not like eye-popping whenever you're discussing a shot. You're going to discuss all these other factors first: the improved defense, the scoring ability, 30 points a night. He is so good at driving and kicking, and not just driving and then throwing the ball out and hoping it goes to the right guy. Like the calculation of driving, slowing his tempo down, finding and surveying the right wing guy to throw it to, and getting it out to them in a crisp manner and kind of in a area in which they can just easily load into their shot. That's very important. He has that vision when he drives. And there are plays like this one at the end of the third quarter where he drives to the rim, he splits the double team, kicks out to a wide open Mike Muscala, one of the better three-point shooters on this team, in the corner. The shot doesn't fall, but he manipulates the defense the entire way, has all that gravity pulling in toward him whenever he drives to the rim, and he gets it out to one of the most reliable three-point shooters on this team. It just so happens that the shot didn't go in, but that's a fantastic play and a fantastic process that is now going to be lost in the ether, so to say. But when you actually look at the game, like that is exactly how this team thrives. This team is going to thrive by Lu Dort continuing his heater from beyond the arc, which we're going to talk about coming up. It's going to thrive from Josh Giddey in a year, 2, 3 years, taking a step from beyond the arc. It's going to thrive from adding in Chet Holmgren, who shot 40% in college from three. It's going to thrive from adding throughout this next offseason and beyond more shooters around Shai that he can do this to, driving and kicking to guys who can knock down the shot. Then his assist numbers become eye-popping. Then you no longer can have 4 different pairs of feet in the paint. Whenever Shai drives, you've got to stay out at least a respectable distance and closing out on his teammates. Like all that stuff ties in together. Basketball is a very one-on-one game in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways it's of course a very much a team game of how it all ties together. one guy can rise the boat, but it's a lot better if there's a lot of other players pitching in, of course. And SGA has been a fantastic superstar, and I think that this game really affirms that. Like if you were worried that it's just a small sample size, or can this be sustainable, or is this really who SGA is now? To me, when he has games like this, it's even more impressive than whenever he just dominates start to finish, drops 40 points, and that's all there is to it. Whenever it feels like he's having a quote-unquote off night and he's dropping 30, like that's just what stars do in this league. That is how you rise to stardom in the NBA. And so he deserves a ton of credit for that, and a ton of credit for his ability to score the basketball. And I just think that his playmaking is so much improved from what it has been in recent years and helping out his teammates. But we'll talk Lu Dort Heater, we'll talk Josh Giddey, and what he had to say about his pairing with SGA, all coming up. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at Turo, folks. Turo is incredible. If you want to rent cars and test out cars, I should say, it is the world's largest car sharing market. Turo is something that you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, and wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts across the U.S., Canada, and coming soon to Australia. Forget boring rental cars. Just find your drive at Turo.com. Turo is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts, and they have what you need in the sense of if you need an SUV or a minivan for that family road trip, you can get it at Turo from the market sharing place of the cars. If you need a pickup truck for some errands or a do-it-yourself project that you just don't have the facilities to haul something that you need, you can get it at Turo. And you can even just test drive an EV and test drive some of the cars you're thinking about investing in long term by first trying them out at the car sharing service marketplace at Turo. So go check it out today. That's Turo.com. Check it out today. Terms and conditions do apply, but make sure that every trip is backed with liability insurance, as it is with Turo.com. Terms and conditions apply, and make sure you check it out today at Turo.com. We are back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, Rylan Stiles. You can follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, we're diving into this game against the Knicks. Thank you so much for making Locked On Thunder your first listen every single morning. Every single day, we're here for you talking Thunder basketball. Subscribe for free across all podcasting platforms so you never miss an episode. For your next listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter most, the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with our local experts and insight that only Locked On can provide. So subscribe to that podcast as well, wherever you get your podcast from. Lu Dort continues his hot streak. I think that he's back. I think that the cold streak that you saw from Lu Dort was just that. It was a cold streak. And I told you a couple weeks ago, I don't think that Lu Dort just forgot how to play basketball, just forgot how to shoot, just forgot how to be a competent offensive player. I think that this is a cold streak that is a brutal one. It was a terrible start from him. There's no denying how bad the start was. But if it was buried in the crevices of a season in February, it would not have been overblown the way that it was whenever it's the first 10 games of the season. But in this game, 24 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, a block. I know that Jalen Brunson went off, but he played some fantastic defense on Jalen Brunson. He said that, if guys are going to hit those shots, basically what he said is if you guys are going to hit those shots, you got to live with it. Like if Jalen Brunson's going to hit those tough mid-range jumpers in the face of Lu Dort, one of the best defenders in the NBA, if not the best defender in the NBA in the perimeter, you got to just live with it. Like that's just how life goes sometimes. Sometimes it's just other guys' night, and they're going to have shots fall. Lu Dort, offensively himself, shot 64% from the floor, 3 for 4 from 3. I think that in this game, Lu Dort was more active offensively, but more under control offensively. Like there was not those possessions where it was clunky or he was trying to do too much or trying to play outside of himself. In this game offensively, he just played his role. He just did his job. He was still active. He was still scrappy. He still created 8 rebounds and in turn, of course, creating possessions that way. But overall, offensively, it was just more of a calm game from him as he shoots the lights out of the gym, 3 for 4 from 3, 64% from the floor. Did a really good job there. Defensively, again, the Brunson stat line is going to be eye-catching, but he is the king of drawing fouls on the defensive end in the sense of fighting through screens and creating that illegal screen call to shift the possession to OKC. And I want you to start watching for that. Like, as you're watching these games, it'll happen at least once a game where Lou Dort is going to draw an offensive foul. Look for it the way that Fish and Cage, they have this bit, Chris Fisher and Michael Cage of Bally Sports, whenever they're broadcasting the Thunder games, they have this bit where they always talk about how once a game everybody steps on the out of bounds line whenever they have the ball in their hands. That same bit can apply to Lou Dort drawing offensive fouls. And also, another area of defense that Lou Dort is really good at. I'll call it the reverse chair pull, so like a chair pushing in. But whenever those jump shooters that you're defending just go up in the air, they're trying to take a jump shot, but then they realize, I'm more contested than I thought, so I'm just going to lean into the defender, try to initiate contact, and hope that the refs will bail me out. Whenever they're going and seeking out contact as jump shooters, Lou Dort does a phenomenal job of just sliding out of the way, just squirming out of the way, and not getting hit with the contact that the offensive player is trying to create, and of course then not getting hit with the foul call from the officials. I think that that's a really good job by him to adapt to the way that the modern NBA game is played. I call it that way because, pulling out the chair whenever a guy's posting up on you, just kind of get out of the way and he falls, whatever. It feels like the guy's like kind of trying to do a trust fall only in front of you, trying to jump into you, creating the contact on the jump shot, and then Lou Dort just slides out of the way, just moves out, and you cannot hit him, and you cannot kind of bait the foul call. And that's especially key for Lou Dort to do and to avoid those cheap fouls, because as an aggressive defender and a primarily on-ball defender and a guy who is entrusted with defending the best offensive players on every single team and the best offensive players in the world, he's going to pick up foul calls. Like, he's going to. Like, he's an aggressive player automatically, and he's guarding and having the toughest assignments. So to avoid those cheap ones is a big deal. To adapt to that and learn how to avoid those cheap ones is huge for Lou Dort, and he's done that especially this season and especially this game against Jalen Brunson, who's a very crafty scorer in his own right. I thought that Darius Bazley played well off the bench. He came in and immediately just blocks 3 shots. Blocking 3 shots after being off for over a week, that is very hard to do. Like that should not be undersold. Like, to have the legs and the bounce to do that in a live NBA game off of the bench after a week plus layoff, that's impressive. 3 rebounds, 7 points. He shot 40% from the floor and had a couple of and ones, which were obviously good to see him finish through contact and be aggressive. He had those patent overzealous possessions, but overall he was still good. Like, this was a game where he had a couple of those, Bazley, don't play outside yourself. Don't do that. Like, don't pound the ball into the hardwood and then spin around and attack somebody from the perimeter to the rack, and just don't do that. But prior to the injury, those possessions had been cut way down. Maybe 1 a game, but a lot of games recently until the injury, there were 0 a game. But it felt like this game he was kind of overconfident, kind of pressing the issue a bit, because I would assume he was so excited to get out there or something. But he just kind of looked overzealous, and at times he reminds me of if Andre thought that he was an elite offensive talent. Like, take Andre and how good he was defensively. Obviously, Bazley's not there, but he's a really good defender. Like, Bazley's a really, really good defender. He's also not a really good offensive player yet, especially whenever he doesn't play that kind of rim running role that he played at times earlier in the season before the injury. It's like if Andre thought that he was like an elite offensive player. Like, that's the kind of confidence that Bazley has in himself offensively, which is good to have confidence, but obviously kind of want to rein that in, which he had done a good job of leading up to the injury. Let's see if now that you kind of got your feet wet, now that you're kind of back in a rhythm, now that you kind of shook off the nerves, excitement, whatever you want to tab it as, of being back. Let's see if he gets back to kind of that more aggressive rim running style offensively that he was in before the injury. Josh Giddey bursted onto the scene offensively after a relatively slow start from him, and I'm going to talk about his activity offensively and also the Thunder slow start in general. And Josh Giddey talked about his pairing with SGA. That's all coming up on today's Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. But I do want to tell you right now about our good friends over at LinkedIn, folks. LinkedIn is incredible. Get your applicants that you need for free by going to linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. LinkedIn gives you so many great options. Whenever you go there, you post your job for free, use the hashtag purple we're hiring tag on your profile. That way people know you're hiring and they can go seek out your application. What they do is they give you so many resources, like interview questions that you can kind of prompt somebody beforehand, skill trainer tests, and also you can just quickly scan through these resumes and see if they have the right job qualifications or experience for your job to proceed with an actual interview in your own right. So like LinkedIn does a great job of trying to streamline this hiring process for you, because we know at LinkedIn that getting these hires right and timely are the biggest part in a high-stakes wager in your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you go to LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right person faster and for free. Check it out today, LinkedIn Jobs. Make sure you post it over there at LinkedIn Jobs/LockedOnNBA. That's LinkedIn Jobs/LockedOnNBA. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. We are back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, Rylan Stiles. You can follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Josh Giddey gets 18 points, 7 assists, 9 rebounds, a steal, shot 53% from the floor, only 3 turnovers in a very heavy 33-minute workload. SGA played 34 minutes, like they kind of obviously shared the floor a ton in this game. So he was asked after the game how he feels with this pairing of SGA and Josh Giddey. Remember, Josh Giddey, of course, is in his second year, but his season ended a day after the All-Star break last year. So, and you mix that with SGA's injury before the All-Star break, and these guys have not played that much time together. And so it's been very important that they get as much time as they can on the floor together this year. And Josh Giddey says that he feels better and more confident in the chemistry with him and SGA each and every time that they play together, and each and every game that goes by. And he mentioned how they both want to make it work, and he mentioned how these things take time to develop. Like you look at Tatum and Brown, which is an example I've used on this podcast for the last couple of weeks. Like Tatum and Brown have had questions if they can work their entire careers together. Even last year, at this time last year, around Thanksgiving, leading into Christmas, even after Christmas, there were Celtics people saying, I don't think that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum can work together. They went to the NBA Finals in a couple of months after that. Like, these things take time, and the bottom line is, as long as both players continue to have the attitude of we want to make it work together, great players are going to play great together. Basketball is a sport where it is easier to complement each other, and it's easier for your two best players to shine together than in most sports, right? Like Ohtani and Trout playing in LA and the Angels, like them playing great together doesn't really do much, because obviously it's not as much of a team game as basketball is. Like, I just think that Josh Giddey and SGA can work together and can play off each other in the NBA, especially as we start seeing this league go to a more positionless style, go to a more versatile style. We start seeing these ball-dominant players get put together more, like Trae Young and DeJounte Murray in Atlanta. Like, obviously that pairing's going to take time to gel as well, but like, it's no longer taboo to have 2, 3, 4 ball-dominant guys. That's what the Thunder want to build, and that's kind of the vision that they're working in. And so if that's kind of the parameters of this whole thing, right, if that's been communicated this entire time to SGA and Josh Giddey, then it's easier to intertwine that than, let's say, if Josh Giddey never joined this team until like year 6 of Shai being in OKC, and he's always been the guy with the ball in his hands, and now he's having to learn. Like, the fact that they're growing together and learning together instantly, right, and step by step, I think will go a long way as well in having this pair work. But for Josh Giddey in this game, relatively slow start from him, and slow start from the team. It's not just the Josh Giddey thing, like slow start from the entire team in this one. But for Josh Giddey specifically, that floater is a real weapon. Like, it's a real deal weapon, and it was on tonight, and his rim finishing's been improved this year, and that is going to be such a nice addition to the team once you get Chet Holmgren back, or once you add kind of these pick and roll options for Josh Giddey that can put pressure on the rim and he can lob the ball up to, like, off of these floaters. Like, it's going to be so impressive and so interesting to watch how this team evolves. Like, this team is going to be very, very fun to watch. But how did the Thunder lose this game? It was a sloppy game. It was a sluggish game. The Thunder would make a run, and I love the way that Josh Giddey described it. The Thunder wouldn't really make a run. They'd make a short burst. Like, it'd be a short burst, like, okay, back within 11, back within 8 this time, back within 9 this time. But each and every run that got you down to 11, got you down to 8, got you down to 9, the Knicks would immediately counterpunch them and immediately end that run, and it would be over. So, like, they kept having these short outbursts where it's like, okay, this is trending in the right direction now, and then it immediately get cut off by the Knicks. That's a great job of the Knicks to be able to do that. But the big thing has been OKC starting slow. How can OKC start fast? Is this a fluke? Is this on the starters? Is it on the matchups? Is it the identity of this team? How can they fix it? I don't know the answers to that, but I'm just throwing it out there. They got to start faster from now on. They tried everything, though. They tried thousands of lineups. They tried playing a zone. Everything you can think to try, they tried. OKC had no answer for Julius Randle or Jalen Brunson. Made incredibly hard shots as well. And RJ Barrett had a great game, the best game he's had in over a week. Like the rumblings of disgruntlement with the fan base in New York and RJ Barrett were starting to get loud. And then RJ Barrett comes out and has a really good game. And the Thunder miss Poku. Like, the Thunder need Poku on this roster. Like, it's gotten to that point. Like, I think that some fans still view Poku as like this circus act. Poku's a legitimate NBA player and a legitimately important piece of this team in its winning ways. Whenever this team wins, it's in large part because Poku plays an impact in most of the wins that they've had over the course of this season. The Knicks once led by 17 points. OKC only got a 2-point lead in this one. 7 lead changes, 3 times tied. OKC got rebounded by 10. OKC once had one more turnover than the Knicks in this game. The Thunder shot for the shooting splits 49, 33, 78. Thunder lost points in the paint by 12. They lost second chance points by 5, and they lost the fast break points as well. Both teams saw 4 players register in double figures. The Thunder were actually the favorites in this game, minus 2.5. That obviously did not cover. The MVP of this game, I'm going to say, is Lu Dort. Lu Dort deserves a ton of credit for the way that he played in this one. So thank you all for listening to Locked On Thunder on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. We'll be back tomorrow with a mailbag episode, and then we're going to be recapping the games all week long here on Locked On Thunder. So subscribe to YouTube and any other podcasting platform that you listen to. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. And until tomorrow, be good and be good to one another.